Hello everyone, this is Haelian. Today we're going to be discussing the 5 most talked about rumors for Hades 2. We're going to take some deep dives into the game trailer, the FAQ, and Greek lore to figure out what's fact and what's fiction. To find these rumors, I searched Reddit, Discord, and news articles to find out what people's theories for the sequel are going to be. Couldn't list every itty bitty rumor, but I think I found 5 interesting theories that I know people want to explore further. If you like this kind of stuff, please feel free to throw some likes and comments on the video since it helps me know what you like to watch. Alright, let's get to it. Number 1. Hades 2 is a prequel. I've seen this comment thrown around a surprising amount despite not having any real evidence to support it. The only theoretical evidence I could find was someone pointing out that Nemesis is holding the Stygian blade in aspect of Nemesis form, which supposedly would imply that this would be before Zagreus attains it. To debunk this one, here is a quote from the dev blog and FAQ. Hades 2 is a direct sequel set in and around the underworld of Greek myth after the events of the original game. I really don't think we need to discuss this one any further since there's really no other interpretation to have at this point in time, so let's just go ahead and call this one busted. Number 2. Zagreus will be a second playable character. To be honest, we have no real evidence to support or deny this claim, but what we do have in abundance is speculation. Given that the studio has the first game to build on, it's assumed that Hades 2 will be bigger, better, and even more badass. So one trick they could use would be to simply import Zagreus to the second game for cheap and free content, but I deny this since I don't think it's actually all that easy to do, for one. It also just doesn't sound like Supergiant Games taking the easy path for the sake of tacking on more content. Every game they have made has been distinctly different from the others, especially when it comes to gameplay. I can't imagine them abandoning this principle even when making a sequel. I'm sure there will be lots of familiarity, and basic mechanics will be the same, but I also think it'll be quite different. Lastly, we have an entire game with hundreds of hours of content featuring Zagreus, so we can always go back. I have no doubt that Zagreus will appear in some capacity in the sequel, but I am doubtful he will be a fully playable character personally. Nevertheless, given the evidence or lack thereof, this myth is still plausible. Number 3. The person chained at the end of the trailer is not Hades. So I've seen this one claimed a few times, some people asking if it could be Zeus or even an older, beefier Zagreus. Let's sound off all of the evidence that indicates otherwise. First off, we have the red laurels that Hades wore in the original, but Zagreus wore those as well. Next we have the iconic beard that no other character had in the first game. And then we have the voice, played by Logan Cunningham, which is unmistakably Hades.
He is no mere titan. He is time itself, and time cannot be stopped. You truly are an idiot, aren't you? To suffer such indignity from my own kin.
While you might think that we haven't crossed off Zagreus yet, we have one last big piece of evidence, and that's the fact that Mel calls him father at the end of the trailer.
Wait for me, father. I'll be there soon.
So to explain this, things might get a little Greek here for a moment, but according to the one Orphic myth that mentions Melinoe, Zeus tricked Persephone into sleeping with him by disguising himself as Hades. Then Persephone became furious, and so Melinoe was born out of that fury as a shadowy apparition. Now you may think that means that Zeus is Mel's father, but there's a few things going on here. Number 1, Zeus and Hades were considered to be the same deity by some and were portrayed as the same in some works, just to confuse us all. Number 2, this wouldn't be the first time that Supergiant Games took a small liberty for the sake of clarity. Zagreus' parents are most often cited as Zeus and Persephone with a question mark over Hades, so it's safe to say they are going in the same direction for Mel. With that, I think that settles who's locked up here, and we can call these ideas busted. Number 4, Hades 2 will have better community mod support. While Hades 1 does have some mods created by the community, the game is not really known for being easy to develop for, but not necessarily at the fault of the studio. I think this one is worth discussing despite a lack of evidence, since it does bring up some interesting ideas. You see, while developing Hades 1, the dev team didn't quite know what they had on their hands yet. The success of Hades was not a guarantee, and while each of their games had a small dedicated following, it felt as though none of them had quite achieved mainstream success. So it's understandable that they didn't put in the extra time and work needed to give Hades all of the tools and support to allow communities to make more content for it. They just couldn't have known how much more content people would crave from Hades. But now, Hades 2 is pretty much a slam dunk with essentially no risk. They could even strive to include things like a level editor or god creator if they so choose. While it's not necessarily on my wish list, I would still love to see what the mod community could come up with if we were given such tools. Better mod support? Plausible. Number 5. Chronos will rewind time for replayability. So slight spoiler for the first game here. The way the devs dealt with still allowing players to escape the underworld after the main story was finished was by having Zagreus become some kind of defense tester for Hades to ensure everything and everyone was working correctly to keep people locked up in the underworld. This was necessary unless the devs simply wanted to rewind time after seeing the credits and pretend none of it happened. But with Chronos, they can quite literally rewind time and have it make sense potentially. Trying to explain who and what Chronos is definitely gets deep into the Greek stuff, and there are actually multiple entities referred to as Chronos. So I'll just give you a scrappy rundown based mostly around the Hades 2 FAQ. We know that Chronos is the Titan of Time and is presumably the main antagonist of Hades 2, so there's no doubt there will be some kind of showdown. According to Greek lore, Chronos was imprisoned in Tartarus by Zeus, his own son. So if we're going to be fighting our way into the underworld, it would make sense that Tartarus is the final area where we would meet Chronos. The FAQ states that Chronos has escaped his imprisonment in the depths of the underworld to wage war on Olympus. Perhaps as a last measure just before defeat, Chronos chooses to send Mel back to the beginning before she even began her descent. Time travel is always tricky, and it's hard to say much more about how this could work. There's definitely some logic behind it, but without any real evidence yet, all we can say is plausible. And that's it. Hey, I hope you liked this video. There's going to be lots more content around Hades on this channel, so if you're into that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe, why not? And if you got good ideas for other videos, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But only good ideas.